I wouldn't say open to assassination. I'm just saying that if it happens, there should be zero fucking sympathy for anybody involved.
There should be no women in the Secret Service at all.
Colonization and capitalism have wiped our collective memory. Because what do you mean homelessness wasn't even a thing until the 1600s?
A liberal YouTube star comes unhinged after Trump's assassination attempt, DEI in the Secret Service, and the craziest anti-capitalist TikTok I've seen in a minute. All this and so much more is coming up on today's episode of Brad vs. Everyone, my daily podcast where I take on the craziest ideas from across our politics and across the internet from a center-right, independent perspective. If you're new here, please consider subscribing and sticking around. We're growing really fast and I would love to have you be a part of this community. And if you're a returning viewer, you know what I'm going to say. Don't forget to hit that like button and do comment with your thoughts as we go along. I do read the comments and I pick a few to respond to in every episode. Now up first, we've got to talk about the liberal streamer and YouTube star Destiny, aka Steven Bonnell, who has unfortunately kind of come off the rails and gone unhinged in the days and hours since the attempt on Trump's life. If you've followed me for some time, you'll know that I've engaged in several constructive and positive conversations with Destiny in the past, and that on some things, I think he has an interesting perspective, even if it's one that I disagree with. And I've always admired his willingness to engage with conservatives in debates and conversations, something many on the left simply point blank refuse to do. But something seems to have changed with Destiny since everything went down on Saturday night with the shooting at the President Trump event where he was narrowly escaped being killed, because he's both on his live streams and YouTube videos and on his Twitter feed, just spiraled into outright madness, essentially endorsing the violence against Trump and his supporters and declaring them unworthy of any sympathy whatsoever. That's not a mischaracterization. In one tweet, Destiny wrote, "Donald Trump incited an insurrection and then was granted full criminal immunity for possibly all of his involvement. I have zero sympathy for anything that happens to him or anyone who supports him." That alone is pretty alarming, because no matter how strenuously you object to somebody's political views or the things they've done, to lose any sympathy for their supporters at all is a really shocking lack of just basic human empathy. But even more unhinged were the tweets he put out in the immediate aftermath of the shooting. Destiny wrote, "If we learned anything today, I hope it's realizing the importance of principles I've stressed many times on stream before. Having a firearm means absolutely nothing if you don't spend time at the range practicing with it." Think about this for a second. In the hours after an innocent bystander had been shot and killed, countless women and children had been traumatized, and the former president barely escaped with his life. He's tweeting, telling people to make sure they practice their firearm accuracy. Yikes. Another tweet from Destiny was arguably even worse. In response to a tweet about the man who lost his life, Destiny quote tweeted it and said, "All I see is Biden up +1 in Pennsylvania." Jesus. Now, tweets are always short sound bites, and you never quite know if they fully capture what somebody actually believes or was trying to articulate. In streams he's done in the last couple of days, he says pretty much the same thing.
Am I misreading here? Are you saying that all of these people are open to assassination attempts?
I wouldn't say open to assassination. I'm just saying that if it happens, there should be zero fucking sympathy for anybody involved.
So you believe that
hold on, just to be clear,
half of the country deserves no sympathy, really?
Yes. When half of the country is supporting an insurrectionist, yes. Democracy only works, and if you're a I don't even know what actually, I don't know what you are. If democracy only works when the people are working to actually, protect it. And when half the people in the country are supporting somebody that is undemocratic, then no, I'm not going to sit here and shed tears for people that end up being the victims of their own insane ideology.
In another video clip, you can see Destiny expressing pretty similar sentiments.
But anyway, just to be clear, you, the guy that got shot at the rally. This is why I don't give a about showing sympathy. This is why I don't give a about the sympathy for any of you fucking losers, because you won't own up to
don't
anything.
Take it out on me.
So there was a lot there to break down and respond to. But first and foremost, for me, this saga is kind of a disturbing example of how even a fairly intelligent and sometimes sober-minded person can have their brain totally broken by tribalism and partisanship. I mean, the man who was killed was a volunteer firefighter and father who died shielding his children physically from bullets with his body. Yet just because he disagrees with Destiny politically, we're supposed to think that man deserves no sympathy or no compassion. That is insane and frankly evil. Yes, they found some old tweets where the guy expressed some fringe MAGA opinions that I don't agree with. I don't care at all. No one deserves to be killed because they have opinions that I or Destiny don't like or don't agree with. And I absolutely believe that people are more than the sum of their political opinions. I mean, this guy wasn't a politician or somebody involved in actually wielding power. So no matter how he voted or what tweets he put out, the net impact on his community as a volunteer firefighter and as a father and as by all accounts a stand-up guy was unequivocally and unambiguously net positive. And I would absolutely say the same thing about a Biden supporter or even a radical leftist whose values politically I genuinely find horrifying and dangerous. I'm really worried about what I'm seeing right now in our political discourse, where it seems like more and more folks are losing sight of what really matters and losing sight of our common humanity. Destiny is supposed to be a more moderate voice on the online left, but even he is jumping through hoops and engaging in mental gymnastics to justify violence against the people he disagrees with. That is really concerning. And of course, the same logic could be used to justify violence against him or his supporters, which, to be clear, I completely oppose and denounce. But when you play with fire, you might get burned. And to his main argument, which is essentially that, well, the other side doesn't condemn political violence like January 6th, so why should I care if they get hurt or bad things happen to them? Why shouldn't I support political violence? This is kindergarten level logic. As children, we learn the basic moral truth that two wrongs don't make a right. And if you embrace the inconsistency of your enemies rather than take the high road and stay committed to your principles of nonviolence, then you are effectively becoming the very thing you say you're standing against. I mean, principles are only principles if you apply them universally, even for your political opponents, and even when other people don't apply them consistently. When you become unmoored from principle, it takes you into very dangerous and disturbing moral territory. And that's what we're seeing with Destiny right now. I want to round out this conversation by reading you a tweet from Destiny from about a year ago that I think shows a better approach to these kinds of issues. In March of 2023, Destiny wrote, "I'm an atheist, so I believe murder is always wrong, whereas you religious folk seem to enjoy selectively justifying it." I agree with Destiny from 2023, not Destiny from this week. That's just my take, but you'll have to let me know what you think in the comments below, and don't forget to hit that like button if you're enjoying today's episode. Up next, right-wing media stars are calling out what they see as DEI insanity in the Secret Service. Because the Secret Service and law enforcement clearly botched some things. Things didn't go quite to plan, although we'll need to wait for a full investigation and full details. During the attempted assassination of Donald Trump, there's been lots of conversation online, but especially in right-wing online circles, about what is going wrong at the Secret Service, which is, of course, a federal agency. Many have been quick to point the finger to DEI, diversity, equity, and inclusion efforts, in particular, seizing on the apparent confusion and chaos that several female Secret Service members were engaged in during the immediate aftermath and ongoing shooting that's been captured in both photos and videos. Some are extrapolating from this to argue that women don't belong in the Secret Service at all. We're gonna see what they had to say, and then I'll give you my more nuanced take on this question. Here's what the Daily Wire host and right-wing commentator Matt Walsh had to say about DEI and women in the Secret Service.
DEI almost got a presidential candidate killed, we can now say with some confidence. But does that mean that no woman should ever be allowed to serve in the Secret Service? Well, yes, it does. A serious country would not hire women to protect its presidents, for all of the reasons exhibited in painful detail on Saturday. For one thing, even if they do their jobs perfectly, they still lack the physical strength and stature to provide cover for a larger than average man or even a smaller than average man. Look at the woman standing in front of Trump. Does anyone really think that the best person for that job, the best, most qualified human to be standing there in that position, in that situation, on that day, is a woman 2 heads shorter than the man she's protecting? Would any serious person deny that it would have been much better to have a larger and stronger man there? No, not any serious person. This is why there should be no women in the Secret Service at all.
So there's a lot to unpack there, but first I want to bring in a few other perspectives from similar right-wing commentators. Michael Knowles, also of the Daily Wire, tweeted that it is perverse and scandalous that we permit women in the Secret Service. The anti-feminist YouTuber and often just Twitter troll Pearl Davis tweeted, "Why do we keep trying to put women in positions where we don't belong? Go work in human resource, assistant, sales, or low-level management. But dear God, please get out of the military, special forces, police officers, firemen, and Secret Service." So I think these right-wing critics have struck upon a nugget of truth, but are taking things way too far. First and foremost, it strikes me as incredibly premature to say that DEI almost got a president killed. We do have evidence suggesting so far some pretty massive failings by local law enforcement and Secret Service officers. Like, based on preliminary reports and witness testimony, the fact that the shooter was brought to law enforcement's attention many minutes before he fired his shot. That needs to be investigated and fully scrutinized, and it absolutely seems like massive strategic and tactical blunders were made. But to attribute that to DEI seems very premature, and it doesn't capture the full picture of everything that went wrong. And I think what's getting lost from this conversation is that many of the women Secret Service officers did demonstrate tremendous courage and bravery, stepping up, first off, to even be on a presidential detail and work in Secret Service. You're accepting a level of risk, and then to step towards the president. For example, the woman that they talked about being too short to cover the president, I mean, she was shielding him with her body to the best of her ability. And for podcasters and writers like myself, or like Matt Walsh and Michael Knowles, to be questioning their courage or saying they don't belong in their line of work, something about that just feels really distasteful to me. I disagree with the notion that women, point blank, don't belong in Secret Service or policing or anything like that. First and foremost, there are many who do a good job and are qualified on their own merits. And there are also some roles in these kinds of situations that would seem to me that you actually need female Secret Service officers. For example, at least some of these Secret Service officers protecting the First Lady would seem to need to be female, unless you think that the First Lady should have to be followed into the bathroom by men, which something tells me conservative commentators like Matt Walsh and Michael Knowles would also be against. What's more, Secret Service and law enforcement contains a vast amount of executive, management, secretarial, and all sorts of administrative roles. I don't see any reason that women should be disqualified point blank from these law enforcement positions or agencies just on the basis of their gender. Now, we can and should have a conversation about specific roles that maybe do need to be limited by gender or at least held to extremely high standard that many women might struggle to meet. This could include the actual presidential detail. But we can have those conversations without advocating for blanket discrimination against women in all forms in these jobs just because of their sex. Now, where these critics hit on a grain of truth is that Secret Service under the Biden administration has emphasized diversity and, in particular, gender representation in a way that's really concerning when it comes to an agency that is literally tasked with life and death. Here's a clip from CBS News where Biden's Secret Service director, who is a woman, explains that they've strived to increase gender representation and even set a goal for 30% of the Secret Service to be women.
To expand hiring, they're aiming to have 30% women recruits by 2030, and even allowed YouTube influencer Michelle Carre to train with agents.
But I'm very conscious as I sit in this chair now of making sure that we need to attract diverse candidates and ensure that we are developing and giving opportunities to everybody in our workforce, and particularly women.
So I completely disagree with this. To the narrow extent they're just talking about not discriminating or being open to candidates of all backgrounds, of course that makes sense. But in positions where we're literally talking about the difference between life and death, nothing except merit and qualifications should be considered. There should be no gender quotas or goals or efforts to increase how diverse the Secret Service looks on a brochure. They should just be picking the best people for the job, full stop. That may include some women, but they shouldn't be prioritizing that or giving them special treatment at all. And I am concerned to see the Biden administration embracing DEI efforts at the expense of merit, even in the most life and death levels of government and situations. In the same way, many pointed out, Matt Walsh did in his full podcast episode, that the Secret Service actually has separate and lower standards for female officers. On the fitness profile evaluation for prospective Secret Service weapon-carrying employees, they are held onto a standard on push-ups, sit-ups, chin-ups, and a 1.5-mile run. And on all 4 categories, there is a separate lower benchmark that women applicants are expected to meet. In the 1.5-mile run, they are expected to complete it several minutes slower than the men. This is incredibly alarming. Are these standards necessary or are they not? Do Secret Service officers need to be able to run 1.5 miles in less than 13 minutes? That's the expectation for the men. If yes, then you shouldn't be lowering that expectation because many women can't meet it. If no, then it shouldn't be the expectation at all. So while I don't support women being carte blanche discriminated against or barred from the Secret Service, there should be one set of standards that Secret Service officers must meet. And if many women can't meet it, then so be it. Now, I do believe some women would still be able to meet it, and I'm happy for them to have the opportunity to do so. In the same way, many of the complaints focus on things like height and being tall enough. Well, then there needs to be a minimum height requirement for Secret Service officers, because I'm sure there are some male officers who are short, and some women can be as tall as 5'10" or 5'11". And again, if that height requirement is truly necessary, then I'm okay with it even if it excludes many female applicants. But this should be a nuanced conversation that doesn't rule out women from these opportunities, all full stop. That's just my take on the situation, but I will say that while I don't think DEI is the main culprit at fault for what went wrong, the fact that it has infiltrated even the most life and death levels of our government is really concerning to me. Let me know what you think in the comments below. And now it's time for Brad versus TikTok, my segment where I take on the craziest ideas from the Clock app.
Pronoun of the day is slugs.
Make sure to subscribe. Don't forget to hit that like button to reward my suffering. And now let's check out the craziest anti-capitalist TikTok I've seen in a minute.
So sick and twisted how colonization and capitalism have wiped our collective memory. Because what do you mean homelessness wasn't even a thing until the 1600s?
Huh?
What do you mean the origins of homelessness can be traced back to colonial America? And the best that Western leftists can do is just argue that we need affordable housing. No, you shouldn't be paying for shelter. Because we weren't doing that for years. Until this country was created. Like, the solutions aren't even like solutions. They're band-aids on gash wounds. Like, the jugular has been split open and everyone just put some ice on it. It genuinely makes me so mad because it's like, you think we're doing that for thousands of years? The indigenous peoples of this continent, of the Americas, Africa, Australia. Like, do you think that our ancestors were paying some random bozo that has nothing to do with them every single month just to have a roof over their head? That shit is an export. Feudalism, landlords, like, that is a colonial export. We were not doing that since the beginning of time. If you needed a place to live, you would build a house and you would live there until you didn't. And it blows me because it's like, even if you suggest, hey, no one should pay for housing because we all needed to live, people look at you like you are crazy. Like, people will fight you on that. Okay, cool, affordable housing, but that's not gonna stop the upward tick of capitalism because there's no end goal. It's just continuous extraction and exploitation and making money until infinity until we're all dead. So let's skip all that, get back to how we were living, and maybe take care of the collective. No, people will literally look at you like you're insane.
I wonder why people look at you like you're insane. I mean, let's take her seriously for at least a minute, guys. And let's talk about this pre-1600, pre-colonial utopia where everyone had homes in the Americas under indigenous and Native American societies. Babe, in a way, everyone then was homeless because absolutely none of them had anything that we would consider a home today. Would you want to live in a teepee? Essentially a tent? What about a wigwam home or an adobe hut? People who live in those kinds of, and I'm not giving them any shade, with the situation and the time and the culture that they were in. I mean, they did the best they could. But people today who live in a essentially hut or a tent of some sort are the people we consider homeless. In actuality, if you could have taken any one of these individual indigenous people and transported them through time and shown them the most ratchet, bare budget, broke ass apartment today, they would be mystified with wonder and amazement at the miraculous luxuries it includes. The running water, the plumbing, the electric lights, the heating, the air conditioning, just to start. Like, I genuinely don't know what kind of crack pipe our friend here has been smoking. The one with the wiped memory isn't us, babe. It's you. And the reason that people look at you like you're a little bit loco and you say that nobody should pay for housing is because that doesn't make any sense. Do you think homes get built and maintained just 'cause? You think all the people doing the hard labor that goes into that are just going to be volunteers? Or do you mean free as in paid for by taxes? Because that's not free. It still has to be paid for, just by taxpayers. Either way, the notion that no one should have to pay and housing will just exist for people is pie in the sky, fantastical thinking with no basis in reality. And once again, what makes this so ironic when TikTokers like this rail against capitalism, right, is that in this instance, and many of the others they identify, there is a real problem. In this case, a lack of affordable housing. But the root cause of that problem is not capitalism, but a lack thereof. The reason housing is so expensive in many urban areas in America is because the supply of housing has been artificially constrained through massive government bureaucracy, red tape, and prohibitions on construction and supply of new housing. In a functioning market that wasn't hamstrung by the government, more housing would have been constructed and offered long ago. But when you have an artificially constrained supply, in light of increasing demand, you get very high, unaffordable prices. Yet that's not capitalism's fault. It's driven by the opposite of capitalism, government restrictions on markets. It's people like this on TikTok and their videos that get thousands and thousands of likes and just reach so many impressionable young minds who I wish I could just gently tap over the head with an economics textbook. Once again, babe, your Delulu is showing. You guys let me know in the comments what you thought of that interesting video and hit that like button, please, to reward my suffering, because I just definitely lost some brain cells from watching that. All right, well now, before we wrap up today's show, I'll read a few of your comments from recent episodes. One person writes, "No matter how much you hate or dislike someone, wishing harm upon them like this is wild." I completely agree. I just can't relate to this. I genuinely can't think of anyone who I disagree with so much that I would want to see physical harm come to them just because of their beliefs or words alone. Another person writes, "A lot of these people would consider themselves against gun violence, as I am, but they're rooting for it in this case?" Yeah, it is a bit strange to see the pro-gun control crowd suddenly low-key cheering on a shooting. Not all of them, to be clear, but just some very vocal ones. Another person writes, "They can never bring up January 6th again." This is an interesting point, right? Because I disagreed with January 6th and the riot because I don't support political violence, and it was a violent riot at the Capitol. And many of these same liberals and Democrats view it as the worst day since 9/11 or something kind of hyperbolic if you ask me. But here, now that's good? Another person writes, laughing emoji, "You say you're not a fan of Trump and you have a problem with Trump every time right before you go into an entire rhetoric of defending him." Well, yes, this might be hard for you to understand, but sometimes people have nuanced positions. They defend the rights or agree on a particular instance with somebody with whom they have general disagreements. I've done that both with Trump more recently and then also with Joe Biden in the past. I don't disagree with him on everything. Another person says, "Brad is judgmental" is such a fire name. It low-key is. Kind of want to change it. I don't know. Let me know in the comments. Should I rename the show Brad is Judgmental? Another person says, "Brad, do you use Discord? If so, have you considered making a Discord server so you and the community you have here could hang out together? There are other commentators who do this, like Amala Unapologetic. I think it would be fun." I don't use Discord, and I haven't given that much thought, but maybe I should do that. Let me know in the comments if that's something you would like to participate in. Another person says, "I keep sending emails and comments on the Piers Morgan show. Here's hoping they get in touch with you. You'd be a great perspective perspective on many issues that Piers brings up on his show, being a more moderate right-leaning person. Yeah, I actually really like Piers Morgan's show. I disagree with a lot of the people he has on, but that's part of what's interesting. He has the true wide array of guests, and I would love to go on. I have spoken with his bookers before, but who knows? Hope they have me. Thanks for putting my name out there. Another person says, what's with the weirdo bots in the comments section? I don't know. There are these random porn bots that comment spam whenever I post something. I don't know how to stop it. I'm sorry, guys. Another person says, shut up, pole smoker. Wow, you really got me there, sir. I don't know how I'll ever recover from that epic own. Anyway, guys, thanks so much for tuning in and joining me on this episode of the Brad vs. Everyone podcast. Don't forget to subscribe if you aren't yet, hit that like button, yada, 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 and we'll talk again tomorrow.